We all love to travel, right? But what if the places we dream of escaping to were actually on the brink of disappearing? Today, we're going to look at the surprisingly fragile state of tourism around the world and explore a really powerful new way of thinking that might just save it.
So let's just start with a pretty tough question. Imagine you've planned that perfect trip, only to find out the coral reef you wanted to snorkel is completely bleached, or maybe that historic coastal village you were dying to see is now regularly flooding. This isn't some far-off sci-fi scenario, you know? It's the very real future for so many destinations, and the stakes are incredibly high.
You know the image we're all sold, the tourism dream? It's all about escape, beauty, discovery. But if you flip that postcard over, there's a much harsher reality. The whole industry is incredibly vulnerable to global shocks. As one study put it, tourism has been both a main victim and carrier of crises. Just think about the pandemic. It totally exposed how fragile a system built on constant movement really is.
So, how did we get to this point? In our first section, we're going to dig into why tourism is on such thin ice. It's an industry that's kind of uniquely positioned right on the front lines of our planet's biggest challenges.
And here's the core of the problem. It's a real double-edged sword. As a victim, the industry gets shut down when travel stops. But as a carrier, its very nature, moving people all over the globe, can actually speed up disruptions. It's this incredibly unstable foundation where the industry is sort of suffering from and contributing to global instability all at the same time.
Okay, but it's not all doom and gloom. This exact vulnerability has sparked a huge search for a better way forward. So, in Section 2, we're going to explore how some communities are building a completely new and much more resilient model for tourism.
The absolute key to this new model is this idea of community resilience. And what's so important to get is that this isn't just about bouncing back to how things were before. No way. It's about adapting, learning, and actually becoming stronger from the experience. It's about communities taking control and building up their own capacity to manage their futures, turning a crisis into a chance to grow.
So how do you actually do that? Well, it's put into practice through a model called community-based tourism, or CBT for short. And you can see from these principles, this is the total opposite of some big corporation coming in and calling the shots. CBT is built from the ground up. It's all about empowering local people, making sure the money stays local, and protecting the environment and culture that make a place special in the first place.
So, what does this actually look like out there, in the real world? In this next section, we'll dive into two incredible examples of communities that are on the front lines, already putting these ideas into action. Our first stop is Guimaras, a small island province in the Philippines. I mean, being a coastal community, it's super vulnerable to natural disasters. But instead of just waiting for something bad to happen, they've built this really powerful system of preparedness. Okay, so researchers used this tool from the Torrens Resilience Institute to basically measure how ready the island is. And just look at these scores. They are incredibly high right across the board, from how connected the community feels to their actual disaster plans. This puts them in what's called the going well zone, which means this is a community that is likely to be extremely resilient.
So what's the secret sauce here? Well, this quote from the research just nails it. It's all about shared responsibility. The DRRM, that's Disaster Risk Reduction and Management, all of the stakeholders are involved. In other words, the local government, the community leaders, the residents, everybody works together. This culture of collaboration is the absolute bedrock of their strength. It just goes to show, when everyone's involved, you can prepare for just about anything.
All right, next we're heading to the highlands of Peru. Here, Quechua indigenous communities are facing the really severe impacts of climate change on their traditional way of life, especially farming. So for them, tourism isn't just a business opportunity, it's a vital strategy for survival and adaptation. And their model is just fascinating. First, they leverage their deep, traditional knowledge, sharing what they know about the ecosystem and the climate shifts they're seeing with visitors. Second, the money from tourism creates this crucial economic buffer, helping them adapt their farming. And finally, and this part is brilliant, visitors don't just leave with souvenirs, they leave as educated advocates, carrying the story of the climate crisis to the rest of the world.
Of course, trying to build this kind of resilient, community-led tourism is not easy, not by a long shot. So our fourth section takes a hard look at the major roadblocks that are standing in the way of this change.
The research points to this one fundamental conflict. You've got governments and big authorities that often prioritize huge, top-down projects focused on urbanization. But those goals can directly clash with the needs of these smaller, bottom-up ecotourism efforts that are actually trying to protect the local environment and empower the community. It's a total mismatch.
And this quote from a community leader in Peru, wow, it just gives such a powerful voice to that disconnect. You can really feel the frustration here. They want to collaborate, but they feel completely isolated and ignored by the very authorities who should be their biggest partners. That gap is a massive barrier to progress.
So, to kind of sum up the challenges, it often boils down to these key things: a lack of political support and money, the wrong kind of infrastructure, and just the sheer difficulty of getting everyone, and I mean everyone, on the same page. Without tackling these hurdles, even the most brilliant community-led ideas can really struggle to take off.
So, where does all of this leave us? This brings us to our final section, rethinking our own journey. Given how fragile tourism is, the amazing potential of this new model, and all the roadblocks in the way, what's the really big takeaway?
Look, if there's one thing to remember from all this, it's this. You can't just import resilience. It doesn't work that way. The stories from Guimarães and the Quechua community show us that real, lasting strength comes from within. It's all about trusting local knowledge, empowering community ownership, and building development from the ground up, not forcing it from the top down.
And that leaves us with one final big question. Because the future of these places isn't just in the hands of governments or big companies. It's also shaped by the choices we all make. So as travelers, as global citizens, what's our role in all this? How can we help support a more resilient and equitable future for the places we love to visit?